What a headshot! What a head!
How's it, guys? This is Dayvy, FPL, and welcome back to the Fantasy Premier League video here on my channel. Now in this video, I'm going to take you guys through my team selection for the upcoming Double Game Week 22. So this video might be a little bit different to the usual team selections, and that's just because I've kind of sprinkled a little bit of the ultimate guide into this video, and the main reason for that is that the talking points relating to Double Game Week 22 are actually talking points that relate to my own personal team. So that's why yesterday I did not create an ultimate guide video on its own, just because I didn't really want to repeat information twice, and I'm pretty sure you guys don't want to hear my voice too many times talking about the same talking points. That also allowed us to give us an extra day of information, and in the current FPL landscape, the closer you are to that deadline, the better, and that's just the kind of uncertainty and everything that goes with it in the current FPL environment. So in this video, we're going to start off with the usual team selection reflecting on Double Game Week at 21. Hopefully was a good game week for you guys, seeing how my own personal team got on, and then we're going to move on to the actual team selection / ultimate guide. So when I spoke about these talking points relating to my own team, I'm relating to the captaincy debate as well as Dennis versus Josh King. We obviously will also look at the Double Game Week fixtures, but I have gone quite in depth into those throughout the videos I've already created, so I'll just be going over a quick kind of summary of the Double Game Weeks and which teams are quite favorable. And the last talking point of the video is going to be my transfer plan for the upcoming game week. After we've looked at my current team, the talking points relating to the Watford and the captaincy, I think that's going to kind of summarize the video quite nicely into what my future plans are for the upcoming game weeks. So that's something you guys are interested in? Sit back, relax, and let's get straight into it. But first, a word from our sponsor. With all the uncertainty in the footballing and FPL world, there's one thing that should not be uncertain, and that's protecting your online identity. And that's where today's sponsor, Surfshot VPN, come in to assist you. So what is Surfshot VPN? Well, they're a virtual private network that allows you to protect your online identity by providing an encryption gateway between yourself and the browsing website, and then also allows you to change your browsing location to whatever you want around the world. The real world use cases for VPNs are absolutely endless, from getting cheaper hotels / flights due to your browsing location to protecting your information when doing a banking transaction on a public hotspot. Personally, I've used VPNs endlessly to browse country locked content on Netflix, YouTube, and Twitter, and I also have relatives overseas that have used it for a similar use case. Surfshot VPN have hooked my viewers up with a coupon code Dayvy for 83% off. Why 83%? Well, they have mentioned that you guys are guaranteed to get 83 points in the next game week if you do use my coupon code. Only joking there, but I'm not joking about the 3 extra free months that you also will get using the link down in the description below. Surfshot VPN are also a 30-day money-back guaranteed company, so you guys have literally nothing to lose. So thanks a lot to Surfshot VPN for sponsoring this video. Now let's get back to the FPL content. So now going on to our Double Game Week at 21 team, and thankfully we actually had a pretty good game week. I think the green arrow we managed to get was about 40%, taking us to just above that 28k mark, closer to the top 10k than I think we've been in these prior game weeks, and I really am thankful for that. In terms of the starting 11, we'll get onto that shortly, but I first want to talk about the bench. Ben Foster there with 0 points, still being out injured, but I was going to start David De Gea anyway, so not too stressed about that one, but unfortunately we did manage to bench Marcus Alonso, and he managed to get 6 points. Now, it wasn't actually a clean sheet. If you guys can take your minds all the way back to those first games of Double Game Week at 21, it feels like an eternity since those first games, but Chelsea vs Liverpool ended up being a 2-2 draw, and Alonso getting some attacking returns in that fixture. Ben White, Douglas Luiz not kind of producing any points, so luckily those players were on our bench. But now moving on to the starting 11, and where we managed to get that 98 points, we did actually take a -8 hit, so that was going to result in the net points being 90 for Game Week at 21, which is quite a high score, and that's where I managed to get quite a good green arrow. But the transfers that we actually did to make that -8 hit was going to be Soufal in, Jared Bowen in, and then also Dominic Calvert-Lewin in. We'll get on to if that was worth a -4 hit a little bit later on, but the players departing were Reece James, Phil Foden, and then also Adam Armstrong. So luckily, Foden, Armstrong, and then Reece James returned about 2 points a net gain over Double Game Week at 21. So on the way out, that was a pretty good transfer, but on the way in, I think we can look at it as a pretty good move considering the fact that we did captain Bowen. But starting off with the defense, where things weren't as rosy, David De Gea with only 3 points was relatively disappointed with that, because against that Wolves side, De Gea was really racking up the save points, and I think at one point he was on 3 bonus points, but then they go and kind of concede later on into the second half, which I think was quite deserved. Wolves were quite attacking in that fixture, but was quite disappointed as a David De Gea owner, but it just seems like that United defense isn't as strong as we might have anticipated. Trent Alexander-Arnold and Cancelo, our two almost template defenders, also only returning 4 and 2 points. Trent getting some attacking returns. And then go on to Safal. Listen to this for a storyline. He gets 1 point in the first game, tests positive, manages to recover, plays the second game, gets an 11-pointer. So for double game week 21, he ends on 12 points. So I can't express how happy I was when that Jared Bowen headed goal went in off a Sufal cross. It was kind of dreamland for us. Mentioned it over on my Twitter page. But Sufal assist, Jared Bowen goal, literally the best we could have probably asked for. And I was really happy that I chose the right defender to bring in, or at least the right West Ham defender to bring in, over some of the other West Ham defenders like a Dawson and a Johnson. We then move on to our midfield department where we had literally no one blanking. We had Salah and Jota both getting attacking returns. Against Chelsea, was super happy with that. If you guys have not watched the Salah goal, go and watch it on the highlights. It was a very well taken goal against a very strong opposition, which kind of just summarizes Mo Salah's form at the current moment. And unfortunately, with him departing to AFCON, we might actually take him out for the upcoming game week. But Jota getting an assist there, I know it was a little bit of a weird assist, but I'll always take it against a strong Chelsea side. We then move on to Heung-min Son, who I think also got an assist for a Sanchez goal against Watford. Wasn't as high scoring as we might have anticipated. I think that Spurs vs Watford game was really one to target, and I think even some people captained a Heung-min Son expecting that game to go quite well. But Spurs did win in the end, but unfortunately if you guys own Kane, a Son only getting an assist, I think it was a little bit of a disappointment considering the opposition. But then moving on to our star of the game week, I'm pretty sure if you guys managed to captain Jared Bowen, you would have also been pretty happy, but him returning 42 points was absolutely sensational. So if you guys actually watched the deadline stream, you would have seen that I spun a random wheel generator between Antonio and Bowen just because I wanted to see who had picked. And if you guys were there, you would have noticed that it landed on Antonio first, but I just said to myself, I really want to captain Jared Bowen, and I think we went on a best of 10 or something like that after the wheel kept on spitting out Antonio. So luckily the right decision was made there with 42 points kind of profit, and I was super happy that I brought him in and captained him, which just shows you that taking a hit can sometimes be worth it. The unfortunate thing about Jared Bowen wasn't the initial assist in the first game, was the fact that last night he could have had at least 4 or 5 goals, hitting the post offside and then hitting the crossbar. I mean, that just shows you how good of a fixture it was for Jared Bowen, and coming out of this with only 2 goals might have actually been a little bit of a disappointment. But I always take those 2 goals after the luck we've had with our captaincies, and looking at you Havertz in game week 9. Then moving on to our forward department, I'm going to start off with the better side of things. We've got Broja, who only had a single game week but still managed to return 8 points. He had a goal and then also 2 bonus points against Brentford in that 4-1 win. A little bit unlucky that he might have not actually got more out of that considering the fact that Southampton did score 4 goals, but I'm always going to take a differential 8-pointer. We then have another double game week player, Antonio, getting I think a goal in the first game and then only 2 points last night. Had a couple of big chances, so definitely could have got more out of that game. So if you guys did captain Antonio, you might be considered a little bit unlucky. But talking about unlucky, our final team player, our final striker to talk about, Dominic Calvert-Lewin, coming back from this long-term injury that he's had. Yes, it was a risk, but I thought with those Everton fixtures and that double might be worth it. So what happens? He plays the first game in the starting 11, 100%, gets a penalty, then proceeds to miss the penalty, and therefore he ends on 0 points for the first game. Then after that, the Leicester vs Everton game gets postponed because of Leicester not having enough first team players, so he ends up on 0 points after that penalty miss. So super unlucky there. I'm feeling a little bit sorry for myself because I did bring him in for a hit, but I just think a striker is always favored on those penalties, and that's why the XG on them is usually quite high. So overall in game week 21, I think DCL finished with an XG of 1.01 because of that penalty, and I think he had the biggest difference of goals versus expected goals. So overall, double game week 21 was a really good game week for my own team. 98 points minus 8, resulting in a net point gain of 90 points, which took us to just above that 28k mark. Let me know in the comments down below how you guys got on. Was it a good game week for you? Hopefully it was, as the double game weeks are quite profitable for us managers that pay attention. But if it wasn't, maybe you captained an Antonio, didn't own a Jared Bowen, I wouldn't be too hard on myself. But now going on to our double game week 22 team, and right off the bat, I want to tell you guys just to relax. Don't worry, I know that I have my captain on David De Gea, and I also have a Heung-min Son who's going to be out with an injury in my starting 11. But what I just want to talk about is the structure of this team, and at the end of the video when I talk about my transfer plan, you'll understand why I had Heung-min Son in my starting 11. And the reason for that is that he's the main kind of candidate to be transferred out this game week, and that's why I just wanted to include him in the starting 11 because whoever I bring in will definitely play. But only 1 free transfer and 0.7 in the bank, so not a lot to kind of deal with there. But I still think with this double game week, we always can take those hits just because we are getting an extra fixture if we take out a single game week player. So I'm going to start off with the bench here because we do have some options to talk about. We've got Ben Foster, who today was announced by the Watford manager that he is back in full team training and therefore could feature in double game week at 22. Now right now I don't think I would play him unless you guys have a single game week player, just because I think Bachmann has been playing relatively well and therefore I think Foster will be on the bench. But I mean, you never know what the Watford manager is thinking. Maybe he does favour Ben Foster. It might be worth the risk if your other goalkeeper has only a single fixture. Mo Salah on the bench here. I might keep him, I might not. He will miss the next 2 games I'm expecting, or at least the next 2 game weeks, game week 22 and game week 23. Egypt losing their first game against Nigeria, which is definitely going to put a dampener on their trophy push. But this is Egypt, this is Mo Salah. He can always pull it out the bag. Ben White and Douglas Luiz yet again make up the rest of our bench. Spurs and United, not great fixtures there, so I think I'll probably will bench them unless I really need them. But now going on to our starting 11 and our goalkeeper David De Gea having 2 fixtures, 2 away games against Aston Villa and then Brentford. A little bit of a pity that these aren't home games. I think that Villa and Brentford away are going to be quite tough, but that doesn't mean that United can't keep a clean sheet. But with their current defensive form, I'm not holding too many thumbs. And that's why definitely David De Gea won't be my captain. I must captain him here because I do think he could be a little bit of an option if you guys don't have literally anyone else in your team. Now the formation might be a little bit surprising in a double game week because we usually do favour attackers, but I think the defence has some good fixtures here. I'm going to start off with Cancelo and Alonso because these two do play each other in the first game of double game week at 22, and Chelsea vs Man City, kind of a top 2, top 3 clash here, and I really do think this game could go either way. And that's why I'm actually hoping for quite a cagey affair. If this was a 0-0, I would be super happy. Even as a Liverpool fan, I think that's the best result to get. But Cancelo or Alonso can get defensive returns, but also that attacking side of them could result in some attacking returns as well. Alonso there continues into a better fixture against Brighton away. Brighton also have been a little bit struggling to score at the current moment, but defensively they are quite strong, and therefore I might be hoping for another boring 0-0. But then completing our defense is 2 single game week players. I've got Soufal and then Trent Alexander-Arnold. Now Trent was out with that injury, or actually have testing positive, but he has recovered from that illness and has been training confirmed by Klopp. So don't really worry, he will be fine for that Brentford at home game, which I do think is actually going to be a great game for Liverpool, even without Sadio Mane and Mo Salah. The Leeds game for Soufal though is a little bit hard to call because Leeds an attacking side, usually quite strong on that attack, and West Ham defensively haven't been that strong recently, but hopefully this last game against Norwich gives them that boost and changes their form. Soufal last night also showing that he has that attacking threat in his locker, and I'm really happy to own 4 fullbacks that all have defensive and attacking returns in their lockers. Then going on to our midfield, I'll talk about Heung-min Son quite briefly because he is going to be out injured. Now the number of weeks has been rumoured to be about 4 game weeks, and that's why I think it is worth taking out Heung-min Son just because he is quite expensive and there are other midfielder options with double game weeks that might be quite profitable. But Jota and Bowen are going nowhere in my team. Brentford at home and Leeds at home, great fixtures from an attacking point of view after both of these sides this season, or at least recently, haven't been that defensively strong. I can almost see a debate here for a single game week captain if you're favouring Bowen or Jota, as I do think these assets are safe and kind of guaranteed to hopefully get some returns even in that single game week. Our forward line could be switched up a little bit, and the main player for that will probably be Broja after he picked up a knock in their game against Brentford a couple of days ago. So he unfortunately, even though he is quite cheap, might make way for another striker. The striker options aren't that deep this season, but I do think those Watford assets and a Ronaldo or Kane could be quite favourable to bring in for double game week 22. However, I don't think I'll be losing Antonio or DCL, even though they had a relatively disappointing double game week at 21, especially Antonio if you guys that captain him, but Leeds at home should be quite a good game. The only thing I do worry about with the English striker, or the Jamaican striker, there, is that he seems to be kind of playing the second striker, or at least holding the ball up, and then playing Bowen and Lanzini in behind the defence. That worries me slightly because I think the returns, or at least the FPL returns, won't be that high, even though he has been playing really well from an FPL point of view, might not be the best option. And then finally, DCL, hopefully he doesn't miss another penalty. Don't even know if he's going to be on penalties in the future. I really do hope that he does, and I think they might give him the next one just to boost his confidence up. But in terms of Norwich, they're known as the form changers of this season, and kind of any team that plays them usually goes on a streak, and therefore that DCL can have a similar goal threat as these other options that have played them in the prior game weeks. Now in terms of DCL, he was back training since about Wednesday, so I do think he'll play or at least start against Norwich, and therefore I do hope it's going to be quite a good game for Everton to bounce back with. So now that you've kind of seen my current setup of my team, obviously with Heung-min Son, he's out injured. Broja with a knock might not even play. I do think there's some variation that I could do with a hit or even a -8. But now quickly skimming over the double game week at 22 fixtures. As I've mentioned previously this week, I've created loads of content, free at drafts, reactions to the double game week at 22 announcement, and I go super in depth there. So now I'm just going to give you a quick summary of what fixtures I think you guys should be targeting. So right off the bat, I think the best teams are going to be the right hand side here. Yes, you can go for the left hand side, but I think those are almost players you keep but you don't bring in. The only exception might be a Brighton. A defender like a Cucurella could be a nice option to go for. I don't think I would touch Lamptey due to some rotation risks and some injury risks, but I do think another Brighton defender could be quite a nice option with that Crystal Palace at home game. But the right hand side, it's where it's at for me in terms of the fixtures. Going to start off with Leicester, Burnley away, Spurs at home. Now we're going to see how Burnley kind of react after losing their main striker Chris Wood. I do think Leicester defensively aren't that strong, but I do think they are favourable from an attacking point of view. Now, a lot of concern has been about this first game for Burnley against Leicester, but I do think this game will go ahead. Brendan Rodgers just confirmed a couple of minutes ago that he does have enough first team players to feature in these upcoming game weeks. So I wouldn't really be worried about these Leicester assets, but please wait as long as possible, get as close to that deadline as possible without the website crashing, so that you will be getting the most up-to-date news, because there always could be a postponement if stuff changes within the next 2 days. Then Spurs at home is not too great from a kind of attacking point of view, because Spurs defense has been quite solid, but as I mentioned, Leicester have to play attacking football because the defense isn't too great. We then have Manchester United, another team that is not on the best of form, but their fixtures look quite strong. Aston Villa away and then Brentford away. Now the only thing I'm worried about in these fixtures, mentioned it with De Gea, is that these are both away games, and United is a big game for these teams, and therefore I think this is almost going to be kind of a cup final. So I think Villa and Brentford will make it super tough for United to do anything, but you guys got to favour those United assets to get you some returns, especially if you do own someone like a Ronaldo. Spurs come in with a semi-good form, defensively at least, but tough fixtures. Arsenal at home in North London derby where anything can happen, and then they travel to Leicester away, who defensively haven't been that strong, so I do think a Harry Kane could get some points there. But the final fixture, Watford. Now the only hindrance here is that it is Watford, a promoted side who have not been playing that well at the current moment, but their fixtures look simply outstanding. Newcastle away and Burnley away, two of their kind of relegation rivals. That's the other thing to kind of add, is that these are going to be relegation battles, almost a 6-pointer, so I'm expecting both of these games to be quite tight. But with the Dennis at Josh King, you just need them to maybe get that 1-0 goal or that 2-1 goal, for example, and then they're going to be in the bonus points, because as a forward they get more points if they score goals. So overall, I would target the right-hand side, maybe leave the left-hand side, but if you do own that left-hand side, keep them, but I probably wouldn't bring them in. And now going on to a usual kind of talking point in our ultimate guide, it's going to relate to captaincy, or at least the top 3 predicted point scorers from Fantasy Football Fix. So what I did was I went over to Fantasy Football Fix, used their predicted points algorithm, and these were the top 3 predicted point scorers for the upcoming double game week at 22. So starting off, we've got Cristiano Ronaldo here with 10.5. Now a lot of people are kind of concerned about his injury concerns. Now I will say there might be a slight reason for concern, but I do think Ronaldo is the type of player to play as many minutes as possible, even if he might have a little bit of a knock, and therefore I think it's safe to assume that he probably will play the majority of double game week 22. So he's predicted to score 10.5, which is quite a large difference between the next in line, which is going to be Maddison, who manages to score 9.7. Now, I won't lie to you guys, when I saw that Maddison was the second highest predicted point scorer, I was a little bit taken aback, was a little bit worried there, but I do think when you look at the fixtures, and Maddison will be that main talisman in that Leicester attack, I can kind of understand it a little bit. But personally, I probably would have said that Harry Kane would be the second highest scorer, but I guess the form of his current Premier League season is coming up to him with only 3 goals scored in the entire Premier League season. So he's predicted to score 1 less point than Maddison with 8.7, but overall I do think Ronaldo is my best option for captaincy, and if you guys do own him, I definitely be captaining him. So why I wanted to talk about captaincy before I talk about my chances, just because I think if you're going to be bringing a player to captain them, such as a Jared Bowen, I think that could be enough reason to take a hit, and therefore if I want to bring Ronaldo in, if I think he's the best option, it might be worth doing that -8 to spread the funds. But now going on to our next talking point, and it's going to be all about the Watford strikers, Dennis versus Josh King. If you guys own one of them, I would keep them. I would just go with whoever you have. But if you guys don't, on a free transfer, and you want to look at one of them, who should you be bringing in? So what I did was I went over to Fantasy Football Fix and I looked at their FPL stats, a kind of constructor, and I took their last 7 games in total just because I didn't want to go too far back and I wanted to go on recent form. So there's a whole bunch of stats that I've combined in this talking point and I'll go through them, and obviously as usual on that left hand side or the right hand side, the star reflects the better stat in general. So in terms of expected FPL points, now these are per 90 stats just because I wanted to get some normalization between them. As you'll see, both of them haven't exactly played the same amount of minutes. So I guess let's go from bottom to top here, switch things up a bit. In terms of expected minutes, Josh King has played every single minute in the last 7 game weeks. Not the same can be said about Dennis, who has played 565, which is a little bit less than Josh King's 630. But what it does show you, if you're looking for a nailed kind of option to go for, Josh King will be playing 90 minutes throughout double game week 22. But that's pretty much the only stat where there's quite a large difference, except for maybe expected FPL points over 90 minutes. Dennis is approved here at 5.1 to Josh King's 4.2, but then things get quite a lot closer. We have expected goals, where actually Josh King is favored to Dennis with 0.5 to 0.3, which is quite surprising to me considering the fact that Dennis has a 0.7 goals per game to Josh King's 0.3. In terms of shots, Josh King is favored yet again with 2.4 to 2.1, and in terms of expected assists, not really the most important stat for a striker, Dennis is favored by 0.1. So when we look at the stats here in terms of expected goals, shots, that sort of thing, we can actually see that Josh King might be the more favorable option, especially due to the fact that he's nailed to play 90 minutes every single game week. But in the back of my mind, I still am favoring Dennis. I don't know why. I just think he might have more of a hunger after not going to AFCON, might be more fired up. And in terms of form, he scored a lot more goals and got a lot more assists than Josh King has over the last couple game weeks. Let me know in the comments down below who you favor out of these two. Has your decision already been made? Do you have one in your squad already? Or if you're on a free transfer, on a free hit, which of these two would you bring in? As I've mentioned, from a stats point of view, Josh King does look slightly better, but I'm just kind of gunning for Dennis as I think he's on better form. And now finally going over my transfer plan for the upcoming game week. Sorry that I have kept this for the last talking point, but you guys will understand I've gone through captaincy, I've gone through Josh King versus Dennis, and I've also talked about my current starting 11. So in terms of 2 players that definitely will be on the way out, it's going to be Heung-min Son and then Breuer as well. So unfortunately with Breuer picking up that knock, I don't exactly know if he's going to start on the weekend, and I also think that Southampton's fixtures don't look that strong, especially in the next couple game weeks. Added to that, Heung-min Son is going to be out for a number of game weeks with an injury. I think these 2 options are really no-brainer to take out, and if I do only take those 2 out, I'll look to bring in James Maddison and then also Dennis. Yes, I will be left with quite a lot of money in the bank, but I can use that maybe next game week to shift some funds around. But I just think I do favor Maddison from a Leicester point of view, and I do favor Dennis from that striker point of view. So these are kind of my no-brainer transfers that I do favor quite a bit, but the next selection is going to be taking a -8 hit and including Mo Salah in there. And where that gets a little bit interesting is that I would still bring in Maddison, but I would then go for Cristiano Ronaldo and captain him because I do think he's the best option to go for in terms of that captaincy for double game week 22. Unfortunately though, that does leave me with 9.7 million in the bank, and in terms of those midfield options for the upcoming double, they aren't that favorable, and therefore I might lean towards just keeping Mo Salah and taking him on the bench for the next 2 game weeks. In terms of captaincy for the first transfer decision, I probably would captain Dennis from Watford. I know absolutely mental there, massive risk there, but I do really favour those Watford fixtures. And Dennis's form is also quite good at the current moment. So massive decisions will be made in the deadline stream coming up tomorrow. If you guys want to check me out, I'll be live for the entire hour before the deadline. So for my own time, that's going to be 7:30 to 8:30. But if you are from the UK, it's going to be from 5:30 to 6:30. So hopefully I do see you guys there. I'll be waiting as long as possible for as much news. Potential postponements might come up. We still do have those press conferences coming up tomorrow where the majority of managers will talk. And I just want to see if maybe some players are out injured still and whether I'm actually going to keep Mo Salah or take him out. Let me know in the comments down below which of these options would you guys rather favor. I do still think that Ronaldo is the best option to go for, but I just think with Salah, I'm going to want to bring him in anyways in the next 2 game weeks. So maybe I'll just save a transfer and punt on a differential captain. But this is basically wrap up the video, guys. Hopefully you did enjoy it. Please don't forget to like it if you did and subscribe if you're new and haven't subscribed yet. I'll be seeing you guys for the deadline stream as I mentioned. Hopefully I do see you there. Otherwise, stay safe. And I'll be signing off. It's been Dave the FPL and I'm out. Cheers. Bye.